and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I know that you all are really interested in this topic, so I don't want to waste too much time giving our introductions, but I do want to go over some quick housekeeping guidelines so that we can all be comfortable and confident in this next hour. So if you're here with us live, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us live today. Even if you're rewatching this on a later date, thank you for taking time to learn and grow with us. If you're here live, we'd love for you to participate by turning your cameras on if you feel called to do so. No shame if you don't want to. As I say, during these chats, I know video fatigue is real, so no pressure to turn your cameras on, but we invite you to if you feel called to do so. We'd love to share virtual space with you today with your cameras on. Otherwise, feel free to use the chat box however you'd like. You can write your questions, your reflections, your own tips and tricks that you find useful. I also encourage you all to network in the chat as this topic is bringing us together in this digital space, and I don't want it to stop after this hour. So I encourage you all to utilize the chat box, share your preferred ways of connecting, whether that be your LinkedIn, your websites. I've seen people put their emails as well. The chat box is yours to network, and I just encourage everyone to be respectful and build meaningful connections here today with us. Now, if at any point you'd like to hop off mute and voice your question or your reflection, just give me a signal by raising your emoji hand or writing to me in the chat box. That will let me know that you'd like to be added to the queue, and as time allows, I will give you the rights to hop off mute. If you do hop off mute at any point in this conversation, you will be featured in our live video as this is being recorded. And if anyone signed up for this, actually all of you today probably signed up for this conversation, you'll be looking out for a rewatch email. That email will include links to this very recorded chat, as well as any links to resources that our guest speaker might bring up throughout the hour. So check out your emails for that rewatch link. And throughout this conversation, if anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can do that by finding me in the chat. You can find me under Mariella Marie. Write to me privately there, and I will raise your question or your reflection and keep you anonymous today. The last thing that I'll say is we'd love for you to follow Power to Fly on socials and subscribe to Power to Fly's newsletter and YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store for you. So I'm going to briefly introduce myself if this is the first time you're joining where I'm moderating a conversation. So originally from California, currently in Patagonia in Argentina. As many of you know who have joined before, I love to bring my reflections to, as they call soft skills, but I love to encourage us to think of them as power skills or essential skills. I love talking about emotional intelligence and the importance of emotional intelligence at work, in our communities, and just in our personal lives in general. So if anyone is interested in philosophizing with me or sharing actionable tips, especially related to this topic, I'm curious to see if anyone wants to dive in on, the importance of these soft skills for crowdfunding, let's say. I'd love to connect with you. We can connect either on LinkedIn or you can support the project that I am working on that is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org, sign up for my newsletter, and I'm happy to connect and continue the conversation there. But today is not about me. It is about our guest speaker, Ashley, who's calling from Boston, Massachusetts today. I'm really interested in learning from her today. So Ashley, for those who have not joined a conversation, because I know you speak a lot, and for those who might be new to hearing you speak today and share your knowledge, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you do, what you're excited to share with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ashley. I'm a TEDx speaker, Forbes featured 4-time founder, and I'm really passionate about uplifting others and building impactful businesses. I got into entrepreneurship a bit unintentionally when I was 16 years old. I saw that a lot of the girls my age, including myself, were struggling tremendously with self-esteem and mental health and relationships. So I decided to do something about it and give a workshop to the 8th grade girls in my hometown. That ended up going really well and became a business. And I ran it for 8 years unexpectedly. And that was called Move. Today, I'm a startup coach at iFundWomen. iFundWomen is really the go-to funding marketplace for women-owned businesses and the people who want to support them. And I'm really excited to talk with you all today about crowdfunding. There's a real strategy behind crowdfunding, and it can be kind of overwhelming, but my goal here today is to really demystify what crowdfunding is, as well as how to do it, So that way all of you can be successful should you decide to crowdfund. So thank you, Mariella. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to hear what you have to share. And yes, it's interesting just already to hear of your personal journey on how you got into something, you say accidental, several years past, but clearly you were following your passion and your voice needed to be heard in that space. So
Thanks.
feel free to share more. Yeah, feel free to share more of your story as you respond to some of these questions that folks have submitted previous to this conversation. Before we get into the questions though, Ashley, I'd love for you to walk us through some of the key takeaways for today's conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, we're going to be focusing on two things here today. The first thing is the do's and don'ts of crowdfunding. The biggest do when it comes to crowdfunding is to prepare. Any kind of business can be successful at crowdfunding if they prepare. It doesn't matter if you're product-based or service-based or a brand new business or have been in business for 20 years. You can be successful if you prepare. And the don't of crowdfunding, the biggest don't is don't just go at it alone and try and whip it together in one day, because you're going to be a lot more successful when you spend the time preparing. And then I'll also be going over how to set up an effective crowdfunding campaign from really, really start to finish. So there's a pretty involved strategy. And like I said, once you understand the strategy, you're in way better shape. So we'll have time today for sure through questions to go over what that looks like.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that I can pull up these awesome questions that folks have submitted previous to our conversation right now. If you hear your question come up that you were able to submit, let us know you're here. We just want to make sure that we get that question covered. And if a question comes to mind in this moment, as I'm sure they will, as Ashley just shares her knowledge and gives tips, feel free to drop those questions in the chat. And as time allows, I will raise those questions to our guest speaker. All right, so let's start with this first question here. When is a good time to do crowdfunding and when isn't?
That is such a good question. So I'm going to start by addressing when isn't a good time. There are very few times of the year that are a bad time to crowdfund. Something that I'll hear a lot is like, oh, is it bad to crowdfund during summertime? Is it bad to crowdfund during December? Like, when is like a bad time to crowdfund? It really goes back to prep work. There's no bad time if you are prepared. And so let me just kind of immediately address that, like, there isn't a time of the year that is especially good or especially bad. That being stated, there are certain months that you can kind of use to your advantage if you identify with that kind of category. So for example, right now, June is Pride Month. You are in the LGBTQIA+ community and you wanted to do a campaign. Part of your marketing materials could be, fund a queer founder and contribute to my campaign. So that's something that I have seen done really, really well, but you don't necessarily need to. Going back to kind of like timing generally, I would say you will want to crowdfund whenever you need money and have the time and space to devote to it. So it doesn't matter if you're, 1 year in business or 20, if you feel that you need funding to get you to the next level of your business, crowdfunding is going to be a really, really good fit for you. And that's the most important thing. And the other thing is like having the space to dedicate to it. So if you are super, super like slammed with work for the next few months, I wouldn't suggest adding something else on your plate, because truthfully, we don't crowdfund many times in our lives. So when we do, to put it a bit bluntly, you want to raise as much money as you possibly can, right? And if you're going to go ahead and do all the work to crowdfund, you kind of want to go as hard as you possibly can. And so that's why I think it's really important that you give yourself the space and the time to crowdfund. But I love that question.
Yes, that was a great question. And I love that you're bringing your marketing expertise to this scenario, especially because we have, a lot of things at our disposal these days. And it's like, but how do I use it? When's the right time? So like,
totally.
Before someone jumps out of the gate, there are all these questions that probably come to mind. So wanted to start this session off with timing. And this next question. That. Yeah, totally. Me too. And thank you for submitting that question. If you're here today, we appreciate you. So let's go back a little further here to continue setting the stage. what are the first steps to start crowdfunding? This is the second question. Let's consider, that the person has decided that, this is necessary. I love that you're highlighting that this isn't something that happens so often. So when we do it, we want to make sure that we're doing it intentionally and having the energy and the space and the tools at our disposal. So what are the first steps to start crowdfunding?
So this would probably be a good opportunity to speak for a period of time about the strategy behind crowdfunding and kind of what that process looks like. If you have any questions, we can get more in depth into anything that I describe in just a moment. But for the next 5 to 10 minutes, I want to really show you what the iFundWomen method crowdfunding playbook looks like, because this is going to be your best friend. We will send it out afterwards. But if you are going to crowdfund, first things first, you should get this playbook. This has literally everything you need in order to crowdfund. And so on the first tab, there is a timeline. So typically, you're going to want to spend 4 to 6 weeks preparing for your crowdfunding campaign, 2 to 7 days in something called an Incognito Launch. This is when you launch privately, just to your close friends and close family. You want to try and raise at least 15% of your campaign goal before you go public. So once you go public, you're going to be live for 30 to 45 days. And that's when you post on social media. That's when you reach out to your larger network. But that is really what a campaign looks like. And we'll totally send this out afterwards. This next tab is incredibly useful. This tells you every single thing you should be doing in the order that you should be doing it. So if you're a little overwhelmed by everything that you learned today, don't worry. This will give you everything that you need to know. The very first thing that you're going to want to do is watch the iFundWomen Method Crowdfunding e-course. This is a free e-course that basically breaks down everything we're going to talk about today in greater detail. Your time frame, you're going to want to do that at least 6 weeks before launch, and you can mark it as to do, in progress, or completed. The next thing it says to do is you're going to want to do pitch honing. So I actually want to show you really quickly kind of what a crowdfunding campaign can look like. So I crowdfunded a few weeks ago, and this was my campaign. It's called the Wildflower Company, and we're on a mission to help you cultivate a life that is thoughtful and purposeful. Up here, you're going to put a campaign video. You're going to put your pitch down here, and then you're going to have your rewards on the side. So at iFundWomen, we are a rewards-based crowdfunding platform, which means that when someone funds you, they can select a reward. Sometimes they can select a monetary contribution and not get a reward, but regardless, you're going to want to have your rewards all down here. So that's what a campaign looks like. And the very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to work on your pitch. So it's important to have a pitch for both the video that I mentioned, as well as for the actual page, right? Because you're going to need text. And so here is a pitch template that we really like. On the left-hand side are questions that you want to answer. In the middle, that's where you're going to put your pitch. And on the right is the iFundWomen example. So basically, you're going to want to answer, what's your 15-second elevator pitch? And that's how you're going to kick it off in both the video and on the page. And over here, you're going to see the iFundWomen example. Then you're going to talk about the problem, your solution, your target customers and audience, why you are uniquely qualified to start and run this business, and then you're going to make the ask. So that is pitch honing. There's 4 main parts to crowdfunding. Pitch honing is the first. The second is network mapping. So here's the interesting thing about crowdfunding that I think a lot of people don't know. It's incredibly relational, and the people that fund you are going to be the people in your network, AKA your friends, family, strangers in your life, as opposed to kind of random people on the internet. So what that means is that you're going to want to map out your network to understand who is actually potentially going to contribute. More specifically, 85% of the funds you raise are going to come from the people that you have a relationship with in real life. Like I said, I crowdfunded and we had 207 funders. Of those 207 funders, only one person, me and my co-founder, didn't know. And it was a random guy off of LinkedIn who just decided to support, who saw one of our posts. And that was super nice, but like we weren't expecting that. And 206 people we did know. So it is very, very relational, which is why you want to map out your network. Literally, what you want to do is just start implementing people's information. And what you also want to do is you want to estimate how much they might contribute, because this is going to help you estimate your goal. When this person adds up what everyone in their network can hypothetically contribute, they get the number $46,000. This person's network is probably a little unrealistic for, quite frankly, a lot of us, but regardless, it is the example. And regardless, the point stands that when you add up all of the hypotheticals, you're going to get a tentative goal amount. Obviously, it can be hard to know what people in your network will fund you, so you can be conservative, but you want to see what number you come up with, because if you want to raise 50,000 and after doing the math, you realize you can only raise 15,000, that's a pretty big difference, right? And so you want to set yourself up for success, and you want to really make sure that you are creating a goal that's realistic. The thing is, people want to support campaigns that are doing well and that look like they have a shot. And if you put 1 million and you raise $20, it doesn't look like a winning campaign to be on. So network mapping is the second part. And then there's reward strategy. So like I mentioned, the rewards are the rewards that you're going to sell in exchange for someone funding you. We typically suggest, you can map them out here, we typically suggest that you have between 6 and 8 rewards. And you really think about the price points. So this person has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rewards under $1,000. And then they have 1, 2, 3 rewards above $1,000. For me, my network, I didn't think anyone would really be able to support us $1,000. So what we did was we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rewards, $250 and under, and then 1 for $350. And notice nobody even got it. And then we had 1 for $500, 1 for $750, and nobody did that either. So you really kind of have to know your audience and know where people are at, so that way you're able to best estimate. While network mapping is pretty tedious, reward strategy is really fun. And the reason why is because you get to get really creative. So I always encourage people to think about rewards in terms of who's in your network and what do they want. So if you're running a service-based business, you could sell your services, but if your network doesn't want your services, you don't have to. And so I always say, think about who is in your network and then craft rewards for them. So more specifically, if you have a lot of teachers in your network, could you offer to sit and help them grade papers? You have a lot of parents in your network, could you offer a babysitting night? Those are the kinds of things that parents want, right? Whereas if I, with my network of 20 somethings, was to offer a babysitting reward, no one would buy it because nobody has children. So you really, really want to customize it and tailor it to who is in your audience. It's worth noting really quickly that you're going to want to make sure your margins are good if you're doing physical products. So this is a space for you to calculate your margins. And also iFundWomen does take a standard 5% fee, and Stripe and PayPal, our payment processors, take a fee as well. So make sure that you run these numbers so that way you know what the net revenue in your bank account is. Finally, the last kind of part of this campaign is marketing strategy. So this is doing the outreach to actually talk to people one-on-one and via social, via email, etc., to let them know what it is that you're up to. I really love crowdfunding because it's a really great marketing campaign. It's a really great way to tell literally everyone you know, hey, here's what I'm up to, as well as give them an opportunity to support. So this is a marketing content calendar. Very simple. I won't go super in depth, but week 2, you can post a new clip of your crowdfunding campaign video on social media. Then you can follow up on your personal emails you sent to your network, so on and so forth. The last thing that I'll show you is
Ashley,
making the ask.
Pardon me. I want to say, I know you're saying you won't go too deep, but feel free to do so, because you're actually answering some of the previously submitted questions as I'm looking over them. So if you want to take your time, and this is really interesting, I think that we're all grateful. So feel free to take your time. Yeah.
Well, this is kind of the bulk of it. Like, if we're going to talk about crowdfunding, we kind of need to go through all this. So I definitely appreciate that. And I think like this is kind of usually what we do, but then there's inevitably like follow-up questions. So it's like, if you have questions, like, let us know. But yeah, this is the last tab. Thank you so much. This is the last tab. This is obviously you're going to have different kinds of people in your network. So you'll have your family, your friends, maybe your professional network, whatever. The way that you speak to your parent is probably different than the way you speak to your nephew or your best friend or so on and so forth. So here are some different kind of messaging examples for all of those different groups, right? And that's fun and helpful too, just because crowdfunding is a lot of work. And so it's helpful to really have all of those examples. So that is like the process of crowdfunding. I don't remember the question, but I think it was where to get started with crowdfunding. This is where you're going to want to get started, is the playbook, filling it out. Once you fill all this out, it's really simple to just start a draft campaign on iFundWomen's website. Anyone can start a campaign on iFundWomen's website. You don't need to be necessarily like a business or a nonprofit. If you're just starting out, like that's okay too, if you have an idea. But that is what I would suggest. Awesome. Thanks for listening. I know that was a lot, but that's important.
Oh, so important and super helpful. I see a lot of people taking notes who have their cameras turned on at least and just heads nodding. So thank you so much, Ashley, for that breakdown. And I know that everyone's looking forward to getting that rewatch email that will include the playbook. A question that comes to mind, just because I love to pick people's brains, specifically as it relates to emotional intelligence, because I can see a lot of places where emotional intelligence needs to come into play, right? Relating to others, communicating, in an authentic way, making sure your boundaries are there to where you don't get, burnt out from something that you really want to do and that you need, and to find your flow. So I would just love to hear you reflect on, where and how someone can use their emotional intelligence or develop their emotional intelligence using this playbook to hopefully get more money. Because you don't link emotional intelligence to money, but actually I think it can probably bring more money, or at least help you have a better relationship with money if we are connected to our emotional intelligence. So I'd love to just that's a wide open question, but where does it come into play here?
Totally. I mean, I think it definitely comes into play because I always encourage people to be super honest. And if you feel, like I always tell people, it's okay to acknowledge that this is out of your comfort zone, right? So crowdfunding is oftentimes uncomfortable for people. And it's really good to push yourself in that way and make the ask regardless. But I always say, like, it's not like you have to pretend that you're super confident and go in and be super bold. You can say, hey, this is, out of my comfort zone, but I really care about the business that I'm building. And so I want to ask in case. What matters is that you make the ask. Like, you can still be authentic about how you ask it. And I even jokingly, like, I sent texts to like lots of my friends when I was texting them for the fourth or fifth time. I was like I joked something along the lines of like, just about how I was like hustling and like, like I have to hustle. I know you haven't been responding, but like, I hope it's okay. I'm texting you again. Cause like, I kind of like, I got to make the ask, and people were receptive, or they didn't respond, and that was fine too. But yeah, absolutely. I think that it definitely comes into play quite a bit.
And what would you recommend for someone who, let's say, considers themselves an introvert, or, maybe this is something just like really, it seems really far out of reach. And so, having to take the no's from even friends that you're testing it with, or, feeling like you're intruding to get what you need. What are some ways to practice, let's say, self-care in this case, so that you don't feel bummed out or you don't stop yourself before even getting started? How do you take the no's? How do you continue to make sure that you're taking care of yourself in this process?
Yeah. So one thing that I did that I thought was really useful was I had my campaign for 45 days instead of 30. And what I liked about having a campaign for 45 days, I didn't realize beforehand, is that I would have several days to give myself space to not do anything on the campaign, as well as to give my network space to not do anything on the campaign. And so I found that to be tremendously helpful. So I was maybe working one every 3 days, one every 4 days, but it wasn't necessarily every single day, because I didn't want to be texting my network every day, and they didn't want to hear from me every single day. So I really liked having kind of a 45-day period to go ahead and do that. And yeah, I think just like building space to rest. I would say, honestly, something else that my co-founder and I did was we prepped everything that we could beforehand. We were essentially just plugging and playing once we were live, which is still a lot of work. But like all of the social graphics, the captions, the emails, the texts, even all of that was drafted well in advance. So essentially, not all we had to do, but all we had to do was post, text, follow up, reach out. It wasn't overwhelming in that sense. And obviously, like I work full-time for iFundWomen, so I have a full-time job. So it's like, I only have so much time, like to give to my business on the side. And so I think that was really, really useful preparing in advance so that way I could really maximize my time.
I love that. So you have this like creative phase and creative and also strategic where you try to knock out as much as you can. That can be automated. And then you basically are managing everything from there on, checking in, making sure people are getting the message. And I think it's a testament that you're using the same method that, you're working full time for, and that is serving something that you're crowdfunding, and this big smile on your face is also proof that you're excited to use this method, that it works. And so thank you for that authenticity and transparency there. Okay, so let's get into some things that might be challenging in this process. So this question reads, what are some risks of crowdfunding?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I'm actually just realizing I didn't really answer previously about what to do if you're a little more like introverted or hesitant. So let me address risks first, and then I want to go back to that. But honestly, when it comes to risks with crowdfunding, if you're crowdfunding on iFundWomen, there really aren't any. And the reason why is because it's equity-free and debt-free capital. So that means we're not taking any equity from your business. And also, you get all of the money, even if you don't hit your goal. So there's no risk there. And it's debt-free, so you don't have to pay it back. So essentially, there's no risk to doing a crowdfunding campaign. The only kind of risk that I could think of is just if you create a really high goal and then you don't come close to it, you're still going to get to keep all that money, but that might not be ideal for your self-esteem. So like, that's why it's important to set a realistic goal. And then when it comes to, being more introverted or being a little more hesitant or tentative to make the ask, I think you don't necessarily need a large network to crowdfund. You just need an engaged network and a connected network that you feel close to, right? And so I also think that if you're looking to raise 5,000 and you don't have a huge network, but you can raise 5,000, that's great. There's nothing discouraging about that. I think so I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't need a large network to crowdfund because it depends on what your campaign goal is. And if your campaign goal is to raise 100,000 and your network can't support that, that's obviously a problem. But if your goal is to raise 10,000, 15,000, 25,000 and your network can't support that, then you're in pretty good shape. But when it comes to making the ask, I would say everyone is nervous too. There's no one that I've ever coached that has felt super confident to go ahead and make the ask. And what I would say is that you really don't know until you make the ask. And that's why it's so essential to. And I can share with you that there was a girl who I knew my sophomore year of college, and I barely knew her. We were involved in a group project once, but we followed each other on Instagram and have for all these years. I had her on my list as someone that I knew and my network map, but I was too scared to reach out to her and to actually ask her because I was feeling like, oh, I don't really know her that well. It's kind of weird to ask her. Anyway, she responded to one of my Instagram stories saying that she loved what I was doing with my new business. And so I figured, you know what? All right, she's on the list. Let me just make the ask. It can't hurt to ask. She ended up funding us $250, which is actually one of the largest contributions we got. And $250 for a 20-something is an enormous contribution. That was I could have never predicted that she would have funded us, period. let alone $250. So that was a real surprise. And I talked to a lot of crowdfunders and I always ask them, were there any funds that you were surprised by? And the answer is always, every single time, yes. So it really is super important to make the ask, because you truly never know until you go ahead and make the ask.
So would this be your advice for the introverts who feel like they don't want to step out of their comfort zone?
And start with your close friends and family who are going to say yes to you. If your family isn't going to say yes to you, start with your best friend who will. Start with the people who are going to say yes to you, build up your confidence, and eventually you'll be able to do more as you go.
I love that. And so let's take it a step back, because I know that some people are probably like, I only know like 3 people who, so how can someone build their network, and, how much time should they allot for that before starting to tap into that network? With the hopes of being able to ask them to support their project.
Yeah. Well, if you think you only know 3 people, I would challenge you to start off with network mapping, because I think a lot of us think that maybe our networks aren't so large. And then once we actually start writing down people's emails that we have or people that we've met over the years, suddenly we realize, whoa, we actually know a lot more people, or perhaps are connected to a lot more people than we realized. I would say, 1, don't underestimate the power of reconnecting with your existing network, right? You don't necessarily need to go out and make totally new connections. You can start with like rekindling the existing relationships in your life. Maybe you've fallen out of touch with people. But if you are interested in doing more networking, I personally really love something called Lunch Club. I'll drop the link later, but it's a really, really great networking platform.
Great. And speaking of networking, for those who are live today, please drop your preferred ways of connecting in the chat. I will also drop my preferred way of connecting. We'll make sure that you get Ashley's, LinkedIn or whatever she wants to share in the rewatch email. And I encourage you all to, extend an invitation to maybe practice your pitch, or see how that you can support each other's projects. I think that will be really helpful for everyone joining this call.
Totally.
Yeah. So feel free to use the chat box, everyone. I will go ahead and do that as well. And let's go to this question here. So you've talked about a lot of the benefits that we can get from crowdfunding, but is there anything else that you'd like to add to this question? Because I didn't get to read it to you. You've been sharing throughout your presentation and your responses, but is there anything else you want to highlight on some of the benefits we can get from crowdfunding, maybe in comparison to something else? You've talked about how it's debt-free, equity-free with iFundWomen. Anything else you want to highlight?
Yeah, so definitely that it's debt-free and equity-free. Additionally, I think it's a really great marketing campaign. And I also think that it is a really great way to get proof of concept if you're a new business. So if you're just starting out and you're like, I don't know if anyone is going to buy this, try crowdfunding, sell your prototype or sample, or basically have people pre-order, right? So I'm selling planners with my new company. We had people pre-order planners. Rather than me investing thousands of dollars to manufacture planners, I decided, let me crowdfund, see if anyone actually wants this planner and if they're going to buy it. And then let me use that money from their pre-orders to go ahead and buy the planners, and then I'll ship it to them. So I think it's a great way to prove test of concept as well.
I love that. And that's the creative part that you said, figuring out your rewards, and also just other ways to strategize, connecting the left and right brains, I like to say, instead of being so logical, linear, all about the dollar bill and the number and the data. Like, how can we bridge both sides, and this is also where emotional intelligence comes in, because we can't really quantify emotional intelligence. It's really about the feeling, about the support that we get from people in our circles. So thank you. All right, so let's move on to this next question here. Actually, Christina has a question in the chat. Can you run more than one at a time if you have individual needs from different groups? Let me know if you want clarification on that, or if you understand, Ashley.
I got it. You definitely can, in the sense that you're allowed to, the platform allows you to run more than one crowdfunding campaign, but I would not suggest it. And the reason why is just because it kind of confuses your network. And so what I would suggest is maybe you run once this year in June, and then you give your network a break, don't exhaust them, and then run another one next January, right? So I've seen people do multiple crowdfunding campaigns successfully after a period of time. Maybe they crowdfund the first time to bring their physical product to life. They crowdfund a second time to open up a physical location. But I would not suggest doing more than one campaign at a time, just because it'll likely confuse your network.
And maybe, yeah, we don't want that. It might even distract you, I would think.
Probably too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Christina would like to ask a question. Let me give you the rights to hop off mute. You should be able to now.
Actually, my question is because I have several different groups of people. For example, I have LBGT group that has some needs that they have a whole section of people that I would reach out for them. I have a multicultural group that there would be a different set of people that we would kind of reach out for them. So when you said kind of asking the needs toward the people, I guess I needed to give a little more clarification, because I have several different smaller groups that I could reach out to different groups. So I guess that would be more of the direction I was asking.
Totally. I'm so glad that you came off mute to ask that, because that's super, super helpful. And what I would suggest is that this is where your reward strategy comes in, and this is where you get creative. So possibly the people in your multicultural group either have the same interests, and maybe they have roughly some of the same income brackets. Maybe not, but maybe they do. What you want to do is you want to create a reward specifically for them that they're going to love, and that is at a price that they can afford, but is maybe a little higher than they would usually give. And then you said, I think you're in an LGBTQIA+ group possibly, or some spaces. You'd also want to create a reward for those folks that they are interested in as well. So that's why it's fun, and you can do between 6 and 8 rewards, and you can even do multiple rewards for the multicultural group, multiple for the LGBTQIA+ group, so on and so forth.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Good luck with everything. Sounds really interesting what you're up to. All right. So time is flying. We do have some more questions to dive into, but I want to encourage you all, if you're live with us, please drop those questions in the chat. All right. Let's move on to this one here. How can crowdfunding help me to save my small business?
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, if you need funding, crowdfunding can definitely help support you in that regard. But I would say, honestly, if you are struggling within your business, crowdfunding, it's important to keep in mind that that's a temporary form of funding, whereas sales is going to be much more consistent. And so truthfully, I might actually encourage you to invest in coaching if possible. We offer coaching at iFundWomen. We offer private coaching, as well as a $9 a month workshop access plan that gives you access to over 100 hours worth of workshops. I would suggest starting with the sales strategy ones and really diving in there.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm sure, as the world is changing all the time, and all of, new events, current events, definitely affect, what we do at work, at home, and in our communities. One specific, recent event that we're still coming out of is the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure that a lot of small businesses could use this resource that you're sharing now. So it's really helpful to hear that you have coaching. And I'd like to dive into, that a little more, because when you were bringing it up in one of your responses, I was like, oh, they do coaching as well. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to a little more of that? Like, why did you all find it useful? What's a story you can maybe share with us to show the importance of something like that, like coaching as you're crowdfunding, especially for newbies, or even if people have done it 100 times, maybe the importance of that.
Totally. Well, I think it really comes down to you don't know what you don't know. And there's a real strategy to crowdfund. And again, I keep saying this, but the more prepared you are, the more successful you're going to be. And so, you might be able to craft a pitch well enough on your own, but if you work with a pitch honing coach to really hone your pitch and make it even more compelling, you're just going to be in an objectively better position. Same with, you can probably do reward strategy well enough, but having an expert crowdfunding coach to really examine your rewards and make sure that they're as strong as possible, it just helps you raise more. A statistic that we have is folks who coach and crowdfund with iFundWomen raise 27 times more than the crowdfunding industry average. So there's really a way to do it, and we know the way to do it.
I love that. It's you're right. You don't know what you don't know. And I love that, especially because it's such a vulnerable thing to do this, right? So I kind of see it as like mentorship also, or like a different kind of sponsorship to get that, knowledge from someone who, a part of your team who can speak to, make sure you avoid this, look out for this kind of thing. So definitely I encourage folks to reach out to Ashley and iFundWomen. All right. Nice. So moving on, okay, perfect. Jess, I see you have a question here. I'm going to bring that up in just a second. All right, so let's move on to this next question that was submitted previous. Here, all right. Let's get into storytelling. So this question reads, what would be the best way to tell my story in a way that gets people to support my business with their funds?
Yes. It's hard to answer without actually seeing your business. And so I think I would just suggest following that pitch honing template that I shared earlier, because that has a really compelling structure for how to tell the story of your business and ask for funds. And also, kind of like I mentioned earlier, feel free to be authentic. Your pitch does not have to be stuffy or professional. If you present very professionally, it can absolutely be that way. But it can also be, fun and honest, and however else you normally speak. I think being honest is really, really important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love to speak about, transparency and vulnerability, the importance of showing that for visibility, let's say, because there's so many stories that we don't get to hear. We hear mainstream stories, let's say the ones that Hollywood put out there in the world, or the algorithm that shows us the stories on social medias. So maybe it discourages some folks from sharing their authentic stories and thinking they need to lace it up with a bunch of tricks and whistles and things. But I love the push to be yourself, to be authentic, and to trust that your story is going to speak to those that you need that need to hear it. Because otherwise, then you're getting yourself into a little bit of trouble if you're trying to sell a story that you don't even necessarily fully want or believe in. So thank you for that, Ashley.
Of course.
Okay, so you talked about some ways to measure success. This question reads, how can we measure the success of our crowdfunding campaign? You did talk about this a little. If there's anything else you'd like to add. And actually my question on top of this one would be, so let's say that, you do meet some metrics, you get to your goals, bit by bit. How would you recommend celebrating reaching those points of success, because sometimes it's like a lot. Okay, I want to get to the end, and if I don't, then I'm just putting myself in a cave, and I don't want to come out because I can't look at myself in the mirror anymore. But I think it's like, if we can celebrate little wins, even if it's reaching out to that person, like you said, you never thought that this person would give you any money, and they actually reached out to you. What are ways that folks can celebrate, just to keep the hope alive throughout their campaign?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. And I think I think it could be fun to have kind of like a thermometer that demonstrates like how much you're raising, and to color in or to increase the amount, right? So that way you can visually see the progress that you're making. I also think like sharing continual updates with your network is a really great way to celebrate. And, overall, just like feeling proud of yourself and making space for that celebration. Exactly like you said, it can look like whatever is celebratory to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ashley. All right, so let's move on to this next question here. We've got about 15 minutes left, everyone. So if there are any last minute questions that come up, please drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I'll move to this question here. Okay, so how do you protect a new idea concept while sourcing crowdfunding startup capital to get the idea to MVP? I am concerned about other parties beating us to market if promoted before business launch.
Yeah, so I actually hear this question quite a bit, and I've never seen a concern with it. So I've never seen the fear actually play out. That being stated, it can't hurt to work with an intellectual property lawyer just to really, really make sure. I have a really great recommendation for one, so I'm more than happy to include that in the follow-up as well. But I would say typically I have not seen it. So the thing is, like when you're starting a new business, it's actually really essential to get feedback. So that way you're able to shape your business to the needs of your customers. At the same time, you do want to protect yourself. So I think it is kind of a balance. And I would say you don't have to give everything away, which is why you should work with an intellectual property lawyer. But it is important to an extent to share. And I have not seen that fear play out, at least in the past year and a half that I've been at iFundWomen. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but oftentimes it's more important to get your idea out. And again, work with an IP lawyer, always a good idea.
And would you suggest, as you're reaching out to your network, to just put a nice little friendly reminder that, you know, this is still a baby and we got to take care of the baby kind of thing? Okay.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Whatever feels important to you. Absolutely.
Great. Okay. All right. So let's move on to this next question. Now, I know you spoke a little bit about, you know, social media, but I'd love to, because I know there's probably a lot to say. You could do a whole hour about social media and just marketing in general. So this question reads, and I'd love for you to dive in deeper, as I said, you shared before, but want to hear more of your tips and tricks. So this question reads, how can we use social media for crowdfunding? And what do we need to take to have in mind when doing that? So yeah, I would love to just hear you reflect and anything you want to share for this question.
So honestly, let me just show you exactly what we did. Please keep in mind that social media really should be supplemental. The biggest and best way to get funding is to do one-on-one outreach. If you call people, call them. If you text people, text them. If you email them, email them. That's going to be the absolute biggest way. That being stated, this is my company's Instagram. And I'll scroll down. I'll show you. This is what we did. So I think we announced that we were crowdfunding here. Want to be the first to pre-order our planner and join our community? We've got you covered. Click the link in the bio. That was our first one. Then we did reward highlights. So we highlighted the planner. We talked about what was in the planner, right? Then we did another crowdfunding reward highlight. We talked about the tote bag that we were selling, what's in the tote bag and what it looks like, et cetera, et cetera. Then we did a progress check-in. So here we did a reel and it was really trendy. We used some trending audio and it did super, super well. Then we did another reward highlight, so on and so forth. Another reward highlight, another reward highlight. That was honestly mostly what we did. And then we did probably a couple of reminders here and there that we were still crowdfunding, but I think reward highlights are a really good thing to do. And also even shouting out the folks who have funded you as well.
I love that. I love that. So again, I'm going to dive in a little deeper here for folks who aren't really on social media so much, or maybe they're taking a break after being, you know, so overwhelmed for all the reasons to be overwhelmed by social media. Do you have any encouraging words again on the importance of, I love that you responded to this question saying, you know, it should not be the main way. It should just
definitely
supplement. I really appreciate you leading with that instead of saying you need to be on it and this is like the main way you're going to do it, because that would just break my heart. And I know a lot of people will be like, well, this isn't for me. So any encouragement for folks who, you know, might not be in that digital space, but who are looking to get into those waters?
Totally. Well, I would say if you're on LinkedIn, use LinkedIn. If you're not on Instagram, you don't need to use Instagram. If you're on Facebook, use Facebook. Like go where you are and like where you've already been. And I think, you know, social media is important. It's also not everything. And if you're just posting on social media, you're not going to get your campaign funded. So I think like hopefully that can kind of take the pressure off of it. I will say that social media is important because you don't want to just be texting someone 10 times in a row. Ideally, they're seeing it on Instagram and then they get a personalized text. And then maybe they're in a group email and then they get another personalized text. You kind of want to have like different touches from different places, which is just like a general marketing strategy as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. Okay, Jess writes here in the chat, do you sell the rewards or do you give them for free?
Yes. So basically so you're selling rewards. So you're going to have like a $75 reward and a $50 reward and a $150 reward. And those are your rewards that you are selling. You're not giving them away for free.
So in that sense, maybe you have, so if it's a service that you have or a product that a friend has, there would need to be some arrangement because that money would either go fully to your campaign or maybe you would split it with that person. I think this might help clarify for Jess.
Yeah. So it's really up to you. So I know one of my friends runs a face mask company. I asked her if she would just donate 4 face masks to me. So she donated 4 face masks. I sold them as rewards. I didn't pay her anything. I did the same thing with my friend Katie, who is a photographer. I asked if I could sell her photography services and if she would donate it to me in exchange. On the other hand, you could work out a portion to pay someone. It's up to you. That's what it comes down to.
And then I just looking at that beautiful spreadsheet that you had, you would need to make sure that you are making a note of that so you can be clear with the money that you're getting.
Precisely. Yep. Exactly.
Great. Oh, this has been so informative. We've got about 9 minutes left. I told you all that time would fly. There's one more question here that you mentioned, you hinted towards without me asking this question, but I want to raise it just in case you want to dive deeper here. So what are some mistakes people make when writing or creating a crowdfunding campaign? You did speak to some earlier. Feel free to repeat those, or if you want to dive in deeper there, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say definitely not preparing is a big mistake. I would say another big mistake is thinking that people, like strangers, are going to fund you. It might happen, but it's not going to effectively fund you. Other mistakes I would say are not setting a goal that's at a realistic number. And the final mistake that I would say we see is not selling compelling rewards. So, for example, people will sometimes put like a t-shirt for $250 and like, think about it. Like, would you spend $250 on a t-shirt? Like, probably not. That probably wouldn't make sense. So a t-shirt isn't a bad reward, but probably at a lower price point, you'd have more success with it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Again, the empathy part, if I can just lace this with a little emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Like, would you buy a t-shirt for $250? If you wouldn't, then why would you do it for someone else?
Exactly.
So Jess, and some folks here in the chat are writing, just for clarification, I dropped the link to iFundWomen so that you all can access, all the beautiful things that Ashley has been speaking about. And in these last moments, Ashley, I'd love for you to maybe help people navigate the website. So people go to the website and specifically Jess is asking about the copy of the workbook. What is that kind of onboarding like? Do people need to sign up and speak with you all, or can you just talk to us a little about what they can expect there?
Yes. So let me re-pull up the workbook. The workbook is free. It's not on the website. You're going to get sent a link. So the way this is going to work is you cannot edit. So all you're going to need to do when you get this link is open it up, click File, make a copy, and then click Make a Copy. This will allow you to edit your version of the playbook. So again, all you're going to do is click File, make a copy, and make a copy. You can put in the instructions, Marielle, like file and then make a copy, but that's all that it is. So that is how you will get the playbook. You'll be emailed it, and then you open it up, file, make a copy.
Awesome. Great. Super exciting. I know that folks are probably rushing to the website now to get their hands on this free playbook that is invaluable. It's
amazing.
Right. I loved everything that you were able to share just with your screen share. I want to share this with folks who I know are thinking about the process or maybe having some trouble. And I hope that this was very helpful for our folks who are live with us or rewatching this. So Ashley, in our last moments here, leave us with some food for thought. You've covered so much already. Where can we connect with you, or where are you speaking again next? How can we support the work that you're doing? So yeah, again, food for thought to keep us encouraged, and then remind us how we can connect with you.
Food for thought is that truly, like I mentioned earlier, you have nothing to lose by going for it. So I would encourage you to try it out if you're looking for funding. I think that crowdfunding is a really reliable way to raise funds, unlike grants, which can be very unpredictable and competitive. And then I would also say, if you go to iFundWomen.com/workshops, we have lots of workshops on crowdfunding. I do crowdfunding office hours each and every week. So you can go ahead and check that out.
Awesome. Well, we are actually finished with our previously submitted questions. I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes back in their day. Ashley, I know you're busy over there helping people get money, so you could probably use these extra minutes. And for folks who are thinking of crowdfunding, please utilize this time to go to iFundWomen.com. Sign up, register. They'll send you this playbook. We are also going to send out a rewatch email for folks who signed up for this conversation so that you can make sure you have access to the links and all that. Thank you everyone so much, and good luck. You can do this. I believe in you. And Ashley, I look forward to staying connected. Thank you.
Yes, Mariella, thank you so much. You're such a lovely host, and I really appreciated you being online. So looking forward to staying connected. Thanks, everybody.